The biggest mistake you make every day is trying to be liked. You smile when you're angry, you agree when you disagree, you stay quiet when you should speak, and you call it kindness. But what if your need for approval is the very thing making people disrespect you? What if the world doesn't reward the nicest person in the room, but the person? Most of the time, these people have no idea they are controlling you. Because the prison isn't outside of you, it's inside. The need to be liked is one of the most powerful forms of psychological slavery ever created. It does not require chains, it does not require threats, it does not require force. It only requires one thing: your willingness to place other people's approval above your own self-respect. From the moment you were a child, you were trained to seek validation. When you behaved well, you were rewarded. When you disappointed others, you were corrected. Slowly, without realizing it, your brain learned a dangerous lesson. Love must be earned, acceptance must be earned, belonging must be earned. And because survival once depended on belonging to a group, your nervous system became obsessed with social approval. Thousands of years ago, rejection could mean death. Being expelled from the tribe meant starvation. Isolation meant vulnerability. Your ancestors survived because they learned how to fit in. But the modern world has changed. The problem is that your biology has not. Today, most people are still operating with ancient software. Their minds continue treating social disapproval as if it were a life-threatening emergency. That is why criticism feels painful. That is why rejection feels devastating. That is why so many people spend their entire lives performing for audiences that are barely paying attention. The average person wakes up every morning and unconsciously asks one question: what must I do today to make people like me? They adjust their opinions. They soften their boundaries. They suppress their truth. They laugh at jokes they don't find funny. They agree with ideas they secretly dislike. They tolerate disrespect they should never accept. All because they are terrified of losing approval. But here's what most people never realize. Approval is the most unstable currency in existence. You can spend years earning it and lose it in a single moment. One disagreement, one mistake, one unpopular opinion, one act of independence. And suddenly, the same people who praised you yesterday begin criticizing you today. Why? Because approval was never loyalty. Approval was always conditional. Machiavelli understood something that most people spend their entire lives refusing to accept. Human beings are naturally self-interested. This doesn't make them evil, it makes them human. People support what benefits them. People protect what serves them. People stay loyal as long as loyalty remains convenient. The moment circumstances change, emotions often change with them. This is why building your identity around being liked is so dangerous. You are building your self-worth on a foundation that can disappear overnight. Imagine constructing a palace on top of quicksand. No matter how beautiful the structure becomes, collapse is inevitable. That is exactly what happens when your confidence depends on external validation. The stronger the winds of opinion become, the weaker your foundation feels. You become emotionally dependent on strangers. Their praise becomes your oxygen. Their criticism becomes your poison. And without realizing it, you hand them complete control over your emotional state. Look around carefully. Many people who appear kind are not actually kind. They are afraid. There is a difference. Kindness comes from strength. People-pleasing comes from fear. A kind person helps because they choose to. A people-pleaser helps because they fear rejection. A kind person can say no. A people pleaser cannot. A kind person respects themselves and others. A people pleaser sacrifices themselves for others. One is generosity, the other is self-abandonment, and society often confuses the two. You have probably been praised for your willingness to accommodate everyone. Perhaps people call you nice, easygoing, understanding, selfless. But what if those compliments are actually disguises? What if the very traits people praise are the same traits that are slowly destroying your power? Think about the moments when you felt exhausted, the moments when resentment quietly built inside your chest, the moments when you said yes while desperately wanting to say no. That wasn't kindness. That was betrayal. Not betrayal of others, betrayal of yourself. Every time you ignore your needs to gain approval, you send your subconscious mind a message. My needs matter less. My feelings matter less. My truth matters less. And eventually, your mind believes it. The tragedy is that many people spend decades shrinking themselves. They become smaller, quieter, more agreeable, more compliant. Not because life demands it, but because they fear what might happen if they stop. They fear conflict. They fear judgment. They fear being misunderstood. Most of all, they fear being disliked. Yet the irony is brutal. The more desperately you seek approval, the less respect you receive. Because people unconsciously sense neediness. They sense dependence. They sense when your identity requires their validation, and dependence never inspires respect. Why would it? Respect comes from strength. Respect comes from self-possession. Respect comes from someone who can stand alone if necessary. This is why some people command attention the moment they enter a room. It isn't their appearance, it isn't their money, it isn't their status, it is their certainty. They are not asking for permission to exist. They are not silently begging for acceptance. They are comfortable in their own skin, and that comfort becomes magnetic. People can feel it. The truth is that power begins the moment you stop negotiating your worth, the moment you stop asking others to tell you who you are, the moment you stop treating approval as a necessity. Because approval is not power. Approval is addiction. And like every addiction, it becomes stronger the more you feed it. The question is no longer whether this addiction exists. The question is whether you are willing to break it. Because the path ahead is uncomfortable. You will disappoint people, you will lose relationships, you will face criticism, you will trigger resistance from those who benefited from your compliance. But on the other side of that discomfort lies something infinitely more valuable than approval: freedom. And freedom begins the moment you realize that being liked is not the same thing as being respected. In fact, many times, they are complete opposites. The journey toward power starts when you stop asking, "How can I make people like me?" and begin asking, "How can I respect myself?" The answer to that question will change everything. Most people spend their lives chasing the wrong prize. They believe that if enough people like them, everything else will fall into place. Opportunities, relationships, success, influence, happiness, respect. But reality operates differently. People may like you and still ignore you. People may like you and still betray you. People may like you and still take advantage of you. Because liking someone requires almost nothing. Respect requires something entirely different. Respect is earned through strength, not physical strength, not aggression, not dominance. Inner strength. The kind of strength that allows a person to remain firm when everyone else bends. The kind of strength that remains calm under pressure. The kind of strength that says no without guilt. Most people never develop this strength because they are trapped in a dangerous misunderstanding. They think respect comes after approval. In reality, approval often comes after respect. Look at the people who command the most attention in any environment, the strongest leaders, the most influential individuals, the people whose words carry weight. They are rarely the people trying hardest to be liked. In fact, many of them are willing to risk disapproval. That willingness changes everything. Because the moment you become willing to lose approval, you become difficult to control, and people instinctively recognize that. Imagine two individuals entering a negotiation. The first person desperately wants everyone to leave happy. They avoid conflict. They avoid disagreement. They compromise immediately. They soften every position. The second person remains respectful but firm. They know what they want. They know what they will accept. They know what they will reject. Which person appears stronger? Which person inspires more confidence? Which person would you trust to lead during a crisis? The answer is obvious. Not because the second person is more aggressive, because they are more certain. Certainty creates trust. Uncertainty destroys it. This is why respect is built upon boundaries. Boundaries communicate value. Every boundary says the same thing. This is where I end and where you begin. Without boundaries, people cannot determine your standards. Without standards, people cannot determine your value. And without value, respect becomes impossible. Many people claim they have boundaries, but what they actually have are requests. A true boundary does not require permission. A true boundary does not require approval. A true boundary exists regardless of whether others like it. Think about how often people explain their decisions. They apologize for saying no. They justify their choices. They provide endless reasons for protecting their own time. Why? Because they secretly fear judgment. The explanation is not for the other person. The explanation is for themselves. They are trying to make their boundary acceptable. But boundaries that require acceptance are not boundaries. They are negotiations. And negotiations invite pressure. Consider this simple example. Someone asks you for a favor you do not want to do. Most people respond like this. I'm sorry. I wish I could help, but I've had a really stressful week and I'm exhausted and I have other responsibilities. Notice what just happened. The explanation created an opening. Now, the other person can attack the explanation. Oh, it won't take long. You can rest later. You're overthinking it. Suddenly, your boundary has become a debate. Now, compare that to a different response. No, I won't be able to do that. That's it. No justification, no defense, no apology, no negotiation, just clarity. Clarity is powerful because clarity removes uncertainty. And uncertainty is where manipulation thrives. Manipulative people survive by finding openings. They search for hesitation. They search for guilt. They search for weakness. The clearer you become, the fewer openings exist. This is why strong individuals, they focus on reality, not perception. Reality. They ask, what is true? What do I want? What matters? Then they act accordingly. Whether others approve becomes secondary. This mindset creates a powerful shift. Instead of chasing respect, you begin generating it naturally, because respect grows wherever self-respect exists, and self-respect requires sacrifice. You must sacrifice the need to be understood. You must sacrifice the need to be liked. You must sacrifice the need to avoid discomfort. This is why so few people possess genuine confidence. Confidence is expensive. It demands that you tolerate disapproval. Most people are unwilling to pay that price. They would rather remain agreeable, safe, predictable, accepted. But acceptance purchased through self-betrayal is never worth the cost. Every time you silence your truth to avoid conflict, you lose a piece of yourself. Every time you tolerate disrespect to preserve harmony, you weaken your position. Every time you prioritize approval over authenticity, your self-respect declines. And without self-respect, confidence eventually collapses. This brings us to one of the most important psychological truths about power. Power is not the ability to control others. Power is the ability to remain controlled by yourself. The person who cannot tolerate criticism is weak. The person who cannot tolerate rejection is weak. The person who cannot tolerate being misunderstood is weak. Why? Because their emotional state depends on external circumstances. Their peace belongs to other people, and anything owned by others can be taken away. True power begins when your emotional foundation becomes internal. When praise arrives, you remain grounded. When criticism arrives, you remain grounded. When approval arrives, you remain grounded. When rejection arrives, you remain grounded. You stop rising and falling with every opinion around you. You become stable. And stability creates authority. People trust stability. People follow stability. People respect stability. Imagine standing in the middle of a storm. Everyone around you is panicking. Everyone around you is reacting emotionally. Everyone around you is losing control. But you remain calm. Not because you know exactly what will happen, because you trust yourself regardless of what happens. That trust is rare, and rarity creates value. This is why respect cannot be faked. You can fake friendliness, you can fake charisma, you can fake confidence for a while, but genuine self-respect reveals itself through behavior, through boundaries, through consistency, through emotional control, and perhaps most importantly, through the willingness to walk away. The strongest person in any interaction is often the person least afraid of leaving, not because they don't care, because they are not desperate. Desperation creates vulnerability. Neediness creates weakness. Attachment creates fear. The less you depend on a specific outcome, the more power you possess within that situation. This principle applies everywhere. Business, friendships, dating, family, leadership, negotiation. The person who can walk away cannot be easily manipulated. The person who cannot walk away becomes vulnerable to pressure. This is why respect begins with independence, not isolation. Independence. The ability to stand on your own feet emotionally, the ability to survive disappointment, the ability to survive rejection, the ability to survive loneliness. Because once you know you can survive those things, they stop controlling you. And when fear stops controlling you, people notice. Your voice changes, your posture changes, your decisions change, your standards change, your entire presence changes. Suddenly, you are no longer asking the world for permission. You are participating in it as an equal. That shift is subtle, but it is life-changing. And once it happens, something fascinating occurs. You stop attracting people who only value compliance, and you begin attracting people who value strength. Some relationships will end, some opportunities will disappear, some people will call you selfish, others will call you cold. Let them. Not everyone benefits when you become stronger, especially those who benefited from your weakness. The truth is simple. Approval makes you comfortable. Respect makes you powerful. And if you are forced to choose between the two, choose respect every time. Because approval can disappear overnight, but self-respect becomes stronger with every difficult decision you make. And that self-respect becomes the foundation of a life that no longer depends on anyone's permission. One of the most misunderstood principles of power is distance. Most people hear the word and immediately think of isolation. They imagine becoming cold, detached, or emotionally unavailable. But strategic distance is not about disconnecting from people. It is about disconnecting from desperation. It is about creating enough space between yourself and others that your value can actually be seen. Because here is a truth most people never learn. What is constantly available is rarely appreciated. Human psychology is built around contrast. We notice what disappears. We value what becomes scarce. We pursue what feels uncertain, and we often overlook what is always there. Think about the air you breathe. It keeps you alive every second of every day, yet you rarely think about it. Why? Because it is abundant. Now, imagine being deprived of it for 60 seconds. Suddenly, it becomes the most valuable thing in existence. The same principle operates in social dynamics. Many people spend their lives making themselves endlessly available, always answering immediately, always showing up, always accommodating, always saying yes, always placing themselves on standby for everyone else's needs. They believe this behavior will make them indispensable. In reality, it often makes them invisible, because availability without boundaries creates familiarity, and excessive familiarity often destroys perceived value. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He knew that leaders who became too accessible eventually lost their mystique. Once people stop viewing you as valuable, they begin viewing you as ordinary. And once you become ordinary, respect begins to fade. Look carefully at your own life. How many times have you gone out of your way for people who barely acknowledged your effort? How many times have you rearranged your schedule to accommodate someone who wouldn't do the same for you? How many times have you given your attention freely only to discover that it was taken for granted? The problem isn't generosity. The problem is excess. Anything given without limits eventually loses value, including your time, including your attention, including your energy. Strategic distance begins when you recognize that your presence has value, not because you are superior to anyone else, but because your life is finite. Every hour you give away is an hour you can never recover. Every ounce of attention you spend is energy that cannot be reused, and yet most people distribute these resources carelessly. They act as if their time is unlimited. They act as if their attention is free. Then they wonder why nobody respects it. The truth is simple. People often treat your time exactly the way you teach them to treat it. If you treat your time as disposable, others will too. If you protect it, others notice. This is where strategic distance becomes powerful. It changes the dynamic. Instead of constantly moving toward people, you allow space to exist. Instead of chasing conversations, you let conversations come to you. Instead of forcing connection, you create room for curiosity. Curiosity is one of the strongest psychological forces in existence. People become fascinated by what they cannot fully access. They become intrigued by what they cannot completely predict. This does not mean playing manipulative games. It means maintaining a life that does not revolve around other people's attention. Many individuals unknowingly make attention their primary source of emotional fuel. Every notification creates excitement. Every compliment creates validation. Every interaction creates temporary relief. But dependence on attention creates vulnerability. The moment attention decreases, anxiety increases. The moment validation disappears, insecurity appears. The person becomes emotionally dependent on external stimulation, and dependency is the enemy of power. Strategic distance breaks this cycle. It teaches you to enjoy your own company, to find fulfillment without constant interaction, to become comfortable with silence. And silence is where most people become uncomfortable. Notice how often people rush to fill empty space. They speak too much. They explain too much. They reveal too much. They fear silence because silence forces them to confront themselves. But powerful people understand something different. Silence creates gravity. Silence creates presence. Silence creates mystery. When you constantly reveal everything about yourself, there is nothing left to discover. When every thought is shared immediately, there is no anticipation. When every emotion is displayed instantly, there is no depth. People know exactly where they stand, exactly what you think, exactly what you feel, and predictability reduces intrigue. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine someone who speaks thoughtfully rather than constantly. Someone who listens more than they talk. Someone who reveals themselves gradually rather than immediately. Someone who appears comfortable without needing attention. That person naturally attracts curiosity. Not because they are trying to, because mystery creates attraction. This principle extends far beyond social interactions. It applies to your goals, your ambitions, your plans, your dreams. One of the biggest mistakes people make is announcing everything before it happens. They tell everyone about their business idea, their fitness goal, their new project, their future plans. And then something strange happens. Motivation fades, energy drops, progress slows. Why? Because the brain often mistakes talking for doing. The attention received from announcing a goal can create a false sense of accomplishment. The reward arrives before the work. Strategic distance teaches a different approach. Move quietly, build privately, develop strength without needing applause. Let results speak louder than intentions, because results command respect. Announcements merely request attention. Is not always strength. Sometimes leaving is. Sometimes the strongest move is to remove yourself from situations that consistently violate your standards. This requires courage, because walking away creates temporary discomfort, but remaining in the wrong environment creates permanent damage. Machiavelli understood that every choice carries consequences. The question is not whether consequences exist. The question is which consequences you are willing to tolerate: temporary loneliness or long-term resentment, temporary uncertainty or long-term dissatisfaction, temporary separation or long-term disrespect. Most people choose immediate comfort. Powerful people choose long-term freedom. That difference changes everything. Because every time you walk away from something that diminishes you, your self-respect grows. And every time your self-respect grows, your confidence deepens. Eventually, people begin sensing this shift. You stop appearing needy. You stop appearing desperate. You stop appearing dependent. You become centered, grounded, stable. And stability is attractive, not only romantically, professionally, socially, psychologically. People trust individuals who are comfortable standing alone because those individuals are difficult to manipulate. Think about the strongest person you know. Not the loudest, not the richest, the strongest. Chances are they possess a certain independence, a certain self-sufficiency, a certain calmness. They do not seem desperate for approval. They do not seem terrified of rejection. They do not seem controlled by every opinion around them. That energy creates influence, not because they seek influence, because freedom naturally generates it. Strategic distance is ultimately about reclaiming ownership of your life, ownership of your time, ownership of your attention, ownership of your emotions, ownership of your choices. It is the realization that your value does not increase by giving yourself away. Your value increases when you invest yourself wisely. Not everyone deserves unlimited access to you. Not everyone deserves unlimited attention. Not everyone deserves unlimited energy. And recognizing that truth is not selfish, it is mature. Because the people who truly value you will respect your boundaries. The people who only value what you provide will resist them. And that distinction reveals everything you need to know. The strongest relationships are not built upon constant availability. They are built upon mutual respect, mutual appreciation, mutual choice, not obligation, not dependency, not fear. Strategic distance helps you identify the difference. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. Because power is not found in chasing people. Power is found in standing firmly enough that the right people choose to walk towards you. There is a moment in every conflict when power changes hands. Most people never notice it. They think power belongs to the person who speaks the loudest, the person with the strongest argument, the person who has the cleverest response. But power rarely belongs to the loudest voice in the room. Power belongs to the person who controls their emotions, while everyone else is losing theirs. Think about the last time someone insulted you. Maybe it was a subtle criticism disguised as advice. Maybe it was a sarcastic comment from a coworker. Maybe it was a partner bringing up an old mistake during an argument. The attack landed. Immediately, your body reacted. Your heart rate increased, your muscles tightened, your mind began searching for a response. You wanted to explain, you wanted to defend yourself, you wanted to prove them wrong, you wanted them to understand. And that is exactly the moment where most people surrender their power. Because the second someone can predict your emotional reaction, they can control your behavior. The moment they know what angers you, they own a piece of you. The moment they know what hurts you, they possess leverage. The moment they know exactly which button to push, they gain access to the machinery of your mind. Machiavelli understood something that modern society often ignores. People reveal their weaknesses through their reactions, not through their words, not through their intentions, through their reactions. Watch any negotiation. The first person who becomes emotional usually loses. Watch any conflict. The first person who loses composure usually loses influence. Watch any leader. The most effective ones are rarely the most emotional. They are the most controlled. This is why emotional discipline is not merely self-improvement, it is strategy. And one of the most powerful strategies ever developed is what we might call the neutral mask. The neutral mask is not about suppressing emotions. It is not about becoming cold. It is not about pretending you don't care. It is about creating enough distance between stimulus and response that you choose your reaction instead of becoming its victim. Most people live reactively. Life happens. They react. Someone praises them. They feel valuable. Someone criticizes them. They feel worthless. Someone ignores them. They feel rejected. Someone validates them. They feel important. Their emotional state is controlled entirely by external events. They are like leaves being blown by the wind. Every opinion changes their direction. Every criticism alters their course. Every compliment dictates their mood. But the person with power operates differently. They become the observer. They still feel emotions, but they do not become those emotions. Imagine someone insults you. The average person instantly reacts. The powerful person pauses. That pause changes everything, because inside that pause exists choice. Inside that pause exists awareness. Inside that pause exists freedom. And freedom is the foundation of power. Most people fear silence. They fear pauses. They fear moments where nothing happens. But silence has extraordinary psychological weight. When someone attacks you and expects a reaction, they have already created a script in their mind. They know how the scene is supposed to unfold. They expect defense. They expect explanation. They expect emotional resistance. When you refuse to provide it, the script collapses. Suddenly, they become uncertain. And uncertainty is uncomfortable. Human beings crave predictability. They want to know where they stand. They want to know how you feel. They want to know if they have influence over you. The neutral mask removes that certainty. You stop broadcasting your internal state. You stop giving away free information, and people begin revealing themselves instead. Notice what happens when someone asks an intrusive question. Most people answer immediately. They feel obligated. They feel pressure. They feel uncomfortable with silence. But the person who understands power pauses. Maybe they smile. Maybe they simply look at the other person. Maybe they ask a question in return. The energy changes. The dynamic shifts. Now, the conversation operates on their terms. This is not manipulation. It is self-possession. There is a crucial difference. Manipulation seeks control over others. Self-possession seeks control over oneself. And paradoxically, the second often creates the first, because people naturally respect those who are not ruled by their impulses. Think about the individuals who command attention whenever they enter a room. It is rarely because they talk non-stop. It is rarely because they constantly seek approval. It is rarely because they desperately try to impress everyone. Often, it is the opposite. They move deliberately. They speak carefully. They appear comfortable with silence. They do not rush to fill empty space. And because of that, people pay attention. Machiavelli frequently emphasized the importance of perception, not because perception is more important than reality, but because perception influences reality. If people perceive you as emotionally unstable, they treat you differently. If people perceive you as desperate, they treat you differently. If people perceive you as dependent on approval, they treat you differently. The neutral mask influences perception. It communicates emotional stability. It communicates confidence. It communicates self-respect. Not through words, through behavior. Now here is where many people misunderstand this concept. They think emotional control means becoming emotionless. That is a mistake. Emotionless people are not powerful. They are disconnected. The goal is not numbness. The goal is mastery. A master swordsman still possesses strength. He simply controls it. A master musician still experiences passion. She simply directs it. A powerful person still feels anger, still feels fear, still feels disappointment, still feels hurt. The difference is that those emotions do not dictate behavior. They provide information, not commands. Imagine someone criticizes your work. Instead of instantly defending yourself, you observe your reaction. You notice the urge to argue. You notice the desire to prove yourself. You notice the discomfort, but you do not obey it. You simply observe. Suddenly, something remarkable happens. The emotion loses power, because awareness creates distance, and distance creates freedom. The majority of human suffering comes from unconscious reactions. People become angry without realizing it, defensive without realizing it, jealous without realizing it, fearful without realizing it. The emotion takes control before consciousness arrives. The neutral mask reverses this process. Consciousness arrives first, reaction comes second. This is why powerful individuals often appear calm during chaos. It is not because they experience less pressure. It is because they have trained themselves not to become pressure. There is another advantage to emotional restraint. It reveals the character of others. When you stop reacting impulsively, you begin seeing people more clearly. You notice who respects boundaries. You notice who seeks control. You notice who becomes uncomfortable when they cannot manipulate your emotions. You notice who only feels powerful when others feel weak. These observations are impossible when you are constantly reacting, because reaction narrows perception. Awareness expands it. Many relationships fail because both people are reacting instead of observing. One person becomes emotional, the other reacts emotionally. Then the first reacts to that reaction, and the cycle continues. Escalation becomes inevitable. But imagine if one person refused to participate. Imagine if one person remained calm, observed, listened, paused. The entire dynamic changes. This is not weakness, it is strength. Anyone can lose control. Control requires effort. Anyone can shout. Discipline requires mastery. Anyone can react. Few can remain centered. And that rarity creates influence. Because calmness under pressure is one of the strongest signals of competence the human mind recognizes. Think about emergency situations. Who do people follow? The person screaming? The person panicking? The person blaming everyone? No. They follow the person who remains composed. Why? Because composure signals capability. Whether consciously or unconsciously, people assume that the calm person sees something they do not. The calm person appears prepared, grounded, stable, and stability attracts trust. This principle applies far beyond emergencies. It applies to business, relationships, leadership, friendships, everywhere. The individual who maintains composure gains influence, not because they force it, because others naturally gravitate towards certainty. And certainty begins internally, not externally. The deepest form of power is not controlling others. It is becoming uncontrollable, not stubborn, not arrogant, not detached from reality, simply rooted, grounded in your values, grounded in your identity, grounded in your self-respect. When that happens, insults lose power, praise loses its addictive grip, approval becomes pleasant but unnecessary, disapproval becomes uncomfortable but survivable. You stop living as a prisoner of external validation. You become internally anchored. And once that happens, something fascinating occurs. People begin treating you differently, not because you demanded respect, not because you forced admiration, but because your behavior communicates a message more powerful than words. I do not belong to my emotions. And anyone who does not belong to their emotions becomes extraordinarily difficult to control. In the next chapter, we will explore the ultimate Machiavellian principle of personal power, why the willingness to walk away is the strongest position you can ever hold, and why the person who needs the outcome least almost always wins.